Welcome back. South African retailers continue to feel the pinch of Transnet's port woes, with tracking and shipping congestion at Richards Bay and Cape Town ports causing major stock delays. In November, the Port of Durban reached a crisis point, with infrastructure failures delaying the festive season goods. The South African Association of Freight Forwarders says such delays have direct cost implications to the economy. For more on this discussion, we are now joined by Emeritus Professor Jan Havenga of the Industrial Engineering Division of Stellenbosch University. Prof, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. The port crisis in South Africa has significantly affected retailers. Could you just provide us with an overview of the situation and the key factors contributing to this crisis?
Yes, thank you very much for the invite. I really appreciate it. What you're feeling here is the aftermath of probably one of the biggest calamities the country has ever experienced. I think we became very, very close to what I would call a logistics blackout, same as what you would have an electricity blackout, very close to the precipice of falling over. It is a bad situation that we experienced, and it got to its worst point probably in the middle of October, towards the end of November last year. And it was caused by many factors, but the two most important ones that we both, well, one we all know about, and that is state capture. But the management of Transnet that followed after state capture also made a huge amount of mistakes. I can give you a long story about rail, but specifically about ports. The two critical things that you require to run a good port is good equipment, and then people that are skilled and people that is motivated. And sadly, what has happened, the equipment was allowed to really get into a state of disrepair. A lot of the most senior people were given severance packages, a lot of skills left, and also some of the skills that remained within the port system were not really allowed to do the work that they used to do, and lost motivation. A lot of media at that stage, and I think it's true, talked about the toxic culture. And that really caused the problem, and we came very, very close to that precipice. But I also call this the aftermath of that event, because while all this was happening last year, and people felt the pain, there was a lot of work that was done by good people behind the scenes to try and turn this around. And that turnaround actually, I think, is now in front of us. So I'm more positive now than I was 3 months ago. That I can assure you.
Well, that's really satisfying to know, Prof. But how has this then port crisis in South Africa impacted on retailers, especially in terms of logistics and supply chain management?
Everybody was impacted. We've spoken a lot about mines. I mean, you're talking about retailers now, but if you haven't delivered 25 million tons of coal at a time when the coal price was 5,000 rand a ton, you're talking about 125 billion rand that this economy has lost. Retailers will also feel it, and they will feel it last because of containers that is delayed, etc. And now we will experience shortages, we will experience things like that. But at the same time, I can tell you, after the Operation Vulindlela, after the logistics roadmap that we worked on for a year and that the President initiated and it was accepted by Cabinet, after the National Logistics Crisis Committee got involved, also between a deal between the Business South Africa and the President, we started to see that this could get better. But the previous management of Transnet doesn't really wanted to get involved in that. When they left, and they left because I think to some extent Minister Gordhan made things very difficult for them, and they resigned in September and October. And once they left, we had new acting management of Transnet. On the Transnet side, Michelle Phillips, the new acting chief executive of Transnet. And I've watched her personally, how she's worked extremely hard to turn this around. So what I can tell you today, and I've called a lot of people over the last few weeks, and this week again, because there was a hiccup in Cape Town. And what I can tell you is that the backlog in Durban has halved. So it is now half of what it was at the height of the crisis. And I am quite sure that before the end of February, the backlog will be completely out of the way. So there was a hiccup. it was not only a hiccup. I think that's unfair to say that word. It was a major, major calamity that we nearly experienced, the logistics backlog. But I'm quite sure it's turned around, and I would put my head on a block that by the end of February, that would have been erased. So difficult now, but it is going to get better. I'm quite sure of it. We struggled a bit in Cape Town because of wind in the last few weeks. It's also not fair to hide behind the wind story. The reason why wind caused delays is because the skills of working with containers and trains and things like that within the wind was also lost. But what I know what has been done, Business South Africa has assisted Transnet by seconding better skills there. Transnet themselves started to cooperate and source skills and reskilling and training people. That I know for a fact. New equipment has already arrived in both ports that I know about, in Cape Town and in Durban, and I think the situation at Port Elizabeth and Kruger anyway is better. So I think the political landscape in South Africa brought us very, very close to the precipice, very close to logistics blackout. I'm quite sure it is going to get better. People were affected. Obviously they were affected because they didn't have stock to sell. A lot of things like that. Businesses didn't have the required space to actually service things. Other capital equipment did not arrive. But all of that is improving now, and I am quite sure it's turning around. I'm quite sure of it.
So, Prof,
a very good job has been done by the current management. I just see it, and I'm amazed to see it, and I'm so happy to see it.
Are there any specific sectors within the retail industry, if we are honing into the retail industry, that's part of the industries that have been affected by this blackout aftermath, as you name it? Have they been impacted? Are there specific goods that we saw being stuck at the ports that then had this effect on specific retailers?
I think it's across the board, and I think it's mostly things that you would find that is containerized. And the containerized imports into South Africa is mostly things like the large bulk of it is processed foods that we import, textiles, and clothes, and things like that we import in containers, and then obviously things like white goods, appliances, all things like that. The thing about this is that many things, if they're slightly delayed, if you were ordering a fridge, it just means that you now have to wait a little bit longer. Somebody else will be able to sell it, or you'll have to wait longer for it. Things that is more sort of on a daily shopping list probably got replaced by local alternatives, if one think about it, which is not that a great or a big impact on the economy, but it is an impact on a commercial sector. That I can understand, and I can understand that people were unhappy about it, but I think it will improve. And it will improve soon. I think so.
You keep mentioning the improvement, Prof, and you're saying that come February, you're seeing that this backlog would be out of the way. Should this type of crisis happen again in the future, what sort of measures do you think retailers need to take in order to mitigate the negative effects? And are there any other alternatives in them not being stuck in such a crisis?
Yes, that is a very, very good question. It's the first time somebody's asked me this question, and I would gladly answer it. It's a very simple one. If I look at what we currently have, and I look at the acting management that is working at the moment, these are competent people that know what they're doing. They're deploying the right people. They are business orientated. They are working with business to fix this. They take help and advice from their clients. And this is why it's working. The moment we come back to a situation where politics begin to interfere into this again, we're going to get back into this problem. And we have an event right in front of us. It's just around the corner to tell us how this is going to go, which is very nice to know. That we'll know soon. And what we will know soon is what will happen when the permanent leadership for Transnet gets appointed. We now have acting leadership that know what they're doing. What will the minister do? I suspect that the board of Transnet, because it's quite a competent board, that's the other thing that I'm happy about what happened last year. During July, the minister appointed a new board with really competent people in them. And they were also instrumental in in getting rid of the previous management and installing this acting leadership that I have now. And because I know they're competent, I think they are going to send a list of names for appointment to the chief executive of Transnet. That is quite good. I just have that suspicion. Then we'll know whether the minister is going to follow that, and very quickly, because we need to do this quickly, appoint somebody that is competent and know what he or she is doing. And that's the problem. And this answers your question, and we will actually have an answer to that question very soon. Will there be political interference? Will there be cadre deployment? Will there be people appointed that cannot really do the job? Or will the person that is appointed somebody that's really, really competent and know what he or she is doing? That will tell us, because that's the answer. Don't interfere from politics. Governments shouldn't actually run businesses. It's as simple as that.
Prof, you make mention a lot of skill and incompetence being some of the biggest factors that contribute to this problem. What do you think there needs to be done in terms of infrastructure changes that you believe need to happen in the immediate future in order to alleviate some of these pressures, even to avert such a crisis happening again in the near future?
Well, the infrastructure there's two levels to it. The first level is on an emergency basis to get new cranes and things like that in. That has been done. So there was very quick and immediate response from the new acting leadership of Transnet, and a lot of new equipment has been bought, and a lot of work is being done to reskill the people again to use this equipment as it is. Over the long term, we will have to have some rethinks, and I'm not a port engineer, but if, for instance, the Pier 2, the biggest container pier in South Africa, still use gantry cranes, there might be newer ways of approaching this. But I'm sure this will get attention as we go along in terms of infrastructure. Infrastructure on the rail is going to be more difficult to fix. What I'm glad is that also with the new leadership, what I see is with training, with skills coming back, with Business South Africa also seconding skills into the system. That is helping, but fixing the infrastructure is going to take longer, and it's going to be more difficult to fix.
Lastly, Prof, we know that there's been disruption in routes on the Red Sea, which possibly created an investment and an advantage for the reroute that would possibly happen to South Africa. Do you think that this crisis could divert that reroute in us possibly getting those investments and those possibilities of those ships coming down via South Africa?
It feels like that, I'm probably much older than you. I can't see on the screen. I still remember the Suez crisis of when I was young, and there's massive amount of ships that then were diverted and had to come around the Cape of Good Hope sailing route. But ships has changed since then. Many ships these days can actually sail the whole way without taking in bunker fuel and without taking in supplies. So the opportunity is not as big as people think. It's not as huge as people think. I think there is an opportunity, and there will be an opportunity miss, but I don't think that is the biggest of our problems or the biggest of our concerns at the moment. Some ships that will want to take on bunker fuel or want to take on some supplies, they might divert towards Mauritius. They might divert towards Walvis Bay, and that's a little bit that we will lose, but I don't think it's the worst. I don't think that's a big story. Most of them can sail all the way to Europe anyway.
All right, Prof, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been a very interesting chat. We certainly do hope, like you say, that backlog will be done by February, at the end of February, and we'll have our retailers getting their goods on time. That was Emeritus Professor Jan Havenga of Stellenbosch University's Department of Industrial Engineering.